So I showed her how basically if that thought pops in, just because it pops in does not mean it's true, right? So like if this popped in and it kind of went in like, oh no, I'm not gonna be able to turn in my work and my teacher's gonna be mad. But then, it kind of just went, she didn't pay attention to it. She didn't really, she just moved on with her day. Then that water doesn't change color, right? It like a teeny bit, but it pretty much stays the same. But what I showed her with the Skittles, but I'm going to do it with tea, is I showed her how what she was doing is she was really taking that to be true. And she just kept going with it. And this means this, and this means this. She kept doing it and doing it and doing it to the point of now her feeling got so intense. She was so nervous, so anxious. She couldn't think clearly anymore. She was stumbling across everything. And so just by me showing her that, she could just see, oh, now I understand what's going on.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to today's Might Help, Can't Hurt. And I've got a fun one today. We've got a little team. We have Brooke Wilden Reese, we have Ashley Hunt, we have James Hurd. Now, Brooke and Ashley are part of something called the Spark Initiative, unless they tell me I got that wrong. But they were when I last talked to them. And James, are you a principal or a vice principal?
I am principal.
You are a principal. At which school?
Horizons Academy, Manatee County.
And is that the one that I met you at?
Yes, it is. Yeah, we had you on campus.
That's right. Yeah, I no offense to teachers everywhere. My mom was a teacher. My brother's a teacher. But hardest audience I've ever talked to, group of teachers.
I agree. Great.
I mean, I've been doing this for 30 years. That was hell.
And they probably gave you their best. They were on their best behavior, probably.
So you're probably wondering why I asked you here. But the reason that I wanted to bring you guys together is because the work that you guys do. I mean, Brooke, when did I come out? Was it 2017?
Gosh, I was just thinking that this morning. Yeah, I think it was around 2017 or 2018.
2018. And I got to see the setup you had. I got to see the work you were doing in the school system, both with kids and with teachers and with principals and with educators. And it was one of those ones where I just thought, man, this is work that needs to be done in the world. I think we've multiplied that by a factor. Is nth the highest factor that you can, like to an nth since then? And I guess a starting point, because of course, always the danger with this is I know you guys, so I just assume a bunch of stuff. But for people, which is, let's be honest, it's going to be most people who don't know about what you do. And I'm happy if you want to go with the elevator pitch version or if you just want a blurble. But like, what is it that you do? I'm promising everyone that it's cool, but what is it that you do?
Well, since I tried the elevator pitch for like 4 years and it never worked, I'll just blurble. How about that?
Perfect.
So we are a small nonprofit with 4.5 employees. That's how we report it on our taxes. And
I got to tell you, when I went into their offices, watching that 0.5 person was really disturbing.
And we teach people our community's most at risk is kind of how we say it. How their mind works and why that's important to know. Because what we've seen is when people truly understand how their mind works, not only do like a million opportunities and possibilities arise for them that weren't necessarily there before, but our at-risk community, especially, all of these kind of limitations that they think are there because of the situation they're in, and especially with young people or the sex traffickers that survivors that we work with, or the inmates that we work with, their circumstances make it look like there's a ton of limitations. And when they understand how their mind truly works, a lot of those just kind of fall away. And seeing that it just never gets old, seeing that potential rise in them and all the stuff that they kind of made up go away is incredible.
Well, I love that you call it the Spark Initiative. And I know you've got another meaning of spark, and I'll ask about that later. But for me, in doing this work, and when I was with you guys and watching, that moment when the spark comes on in someone's eyes.
Yeah.
I always say it's the second most beautiful experience that I know. The first one being when it comes on in mine from time to time.
Yeah.
But it is. There's something so thrilling in the most wholesome way about watching that happen.
Yeah.
Ashley, what do you really do?
What do I really do? Oh, well, she kind of got it. No. Yeah, I would say basically what she said, but really we are going in. So we've created this program. We have all of this stuff on, different ways that we can teach it, because we do know that we're working with kids, and to just show up in a room and be like, hi, I'm just going to chat with you today. It takes a little bit more than that. So, we've created a crazy amount of activities. We have all sorts of stuff that we do with candy and with props and all this stuff to really keep them engaged. But we then just go and show up to the classroom. So we'll go into alternative schools. We go into regular schools. We'll go into jails, all sorts of different settings, and do the exact same thing. Just talk about this understanding of how their mind works. And just like Brooke was saying, every single time that we do this, I just see more and more of the need in this. And also, like you were saying, with that, when that spark comes alive, like when you can see it in their eyes, that is what keeps me doing this time and time again. Like, it does not matter with our 4.5 employees, how much work we have, and we're working at all hours of the night. That's what keeps me going, is because I truly see how helpful this is, and what a difference it can make when people just understand.
And how many schools do you guys have you worked in?
Gosh, that's a great question.
All right, while you're pondering that,
A lot.
a lot. You're as unprepared as I am for this. How hard a sell was it for you, in other words, to accept these people coming in with this idea that they're going to share with the kids that they are not at the mercy of their circumstances?
I would suspect that I've been one of the easier sells, because I had a little secret. And the little secret that I had, that Brooke and I discovered in one of our earliest meetings, was that I actually had a lot of background and training in the three principles.
I forgot that. That's right.
Yeah. So I sort of had a secret weapon that worked in all of our favor in that case. I can tell you that our site was a challenging site, and still is. But I think Brooke came up with a brilliant idea about how we were really going to expose our staff. And we really weren't even trying to teach at the staff. I think she can speak to the resistance that there seemed to be about folks feeling like this was chakras and whatever, and really kind of clamming up at the initial introductions. So the idea became, okay, well, we'll just come on the campus, flood the campus really, and work with the students and let the staff learn as they listen. And I think that was brilliant. It's worked, and we're still reaping benefits from that.
Yeah, because that way you get to see it. And
right.
If, as it happens, what you're saying is actually how people work and how their minds work.
Right. Yep.
People will cotton on.
Right. I think the mentors will have some great stories too. If you could get some of those stories about when they were working with students, how the staff sort of kind of came in and drew closer and closer.
I'd love to hear that. Yeah.
Awesome.
Story time.
Well, there were definitely a ton of times when I would be in there and I would just keep seeing the staff members kind of like perking up, so they would be at their desk grading their papers, doing their stuff that they thought, okay, I'm just going to get this out of the way while she takes over this class. And I would take over the class, and as I was speaking, I would kind of see out of the corner of my eye. I remember one of the teachers, she just was writing, and then suddenly she was just like, what did you just say? And I don't even remember what it was, but I said it again. She's like, you know what? That's really true. And I'm like, oh, is it now? And so then she kind of just kept shaking and nodding her head and just like really zoned it in. And I see that approach works at a lot of different schools that we do. There was one school that I went into, and I will never forget this. The assistant principal came in, and afterwards she said, "Are you here every week at this time?" And I said, "Yes." "Why?" And she said, "Because I just feel like I went to this amazing therapy session, and like I just need to keep coming back." And so I said, "Oh, well, you could come back if you want to." So then the next week she came back and she brought 2 teachers in. And then slowly but surely, I mean, at one point I'm teaching the class and I look over and there's just a group of adults sitting there. And they're like, "Yeah, see, I told you."
Yeah.
It's such an interesting approach that really does. It helps. It works.
Yeah.
I remember one time I was at Horizons and I had the job of working with the teachers. So when Michael came in, just so you know, when Michael came in to talk to them and he said, "That's the hardest thing I've ever done," I'm like, thank God, because I've been feeling like this is pretty difficult. But I remember I was talking to one of the teachers and just kind of asking, like, "Are you getting anything out of this?" And she was like, "No, but this is great for the kids." And then she went on to tell this story about how she was in like some argument she got in with her husband, and she realized that it wasn't, really about the argument. And she told the story about how she benefited. And I said, "Oh, well, that's kind of what we're talking about, right? I'm glad that helped you." And she's like, "Oh, yeah, I guess it did."
No, I remember back in the days when I used to do sort of more traditional hypnotherapy and things like that. I had a client who came in and we did the thing and she went out and well, that didn't work. And then it came out in conversation that she hadn't smoked since. and I was like, "Well, I thought you said it didn't work." And she said, "Well, it didn't, but then I was just thinking about it and I thought, no, I'm gonna stop." It's like, all right.
Yeah.
So James, what have you noticed in the school, in the feel at the school overall? Like, is there anything that is for you tangible, even if it may or may not be tangible? And then I guess, long question, is there something tangible that's noticeable to outsiders as well?
Well, the second part of that second question is pretty tough. But I will tell you, there's been a lasting impact. Got me with the bells.
No, that's what you do. No,
I sneaked in a little throat clear in there too, but that's okay. There's going to be another one, and I'm sure I'm going to miss it. Probably the biggest piece is we have to remind our staff all the time that our students are dealing with various types of trauma in their families. They're just, we had to deal with it during the pandemic when we first came back and went to this whole virtual platform. Folks were sort of stuck on a few important teacher business points about grading and what have you. And so the conversations had to be about, well, here's what has happened during this pandemic that folks are dealing with. Someone was about to buy a house and they couldn't. Someone's, lost family members to this disease. Someone has, is working with someone who's a first responder, or an essential worker who is, quarantined. These are the issues that we as a staff are dealing with. Now multiply those for these families of the students who we're upset that they're not engaging on a remote platform. Well, it was easy to frame those conversations because we were really able just to talk a little bit about perspective. And so the big lasting effect is that there's just a few terms that I can sort of throw out or sort of introduce now that folks automatically know, or they'll throw them out. They'll say, we really need to be paying attention to what they're thinking. I'm not sure how he sees this situation. He probably thinks he's doing what we're asking to do. They probably feel that this is, what we were trying to tell them to do. We need to try to see how they heard it. So there's a whole language that many of our
no, it's adding that flavor of authenticity. I mean, he's
exactly.
Like, "Oh my God, it smells." I'm like, "Look, I told you he was a school principal." No,
you see me reacting to, they were very, very kind when they, designed this building, and they gave me the loudest speaker anywhere. So I don't miss it either. But long and short of it is we have a whole language that we're able to turn to, that we're able to use, that is now embedded. And again, it's sort of like you're a hypnotherapy person. I hadn't smoked since. I'm not sure if they even realize what they're saying. That core group of teachers and staff who are still here. So it's huge for us, especially when dealing with trauma.
Yeah.
And then also, I think what you might notice is when we have some of our instructional support, our social workers who come in, our behavior specialists who work for the district, and they change those folks out pretty routinely. I think they can see as we begin to build behavior plans for students, they watch these processes take place on other campuses. I think there's an authenticity to ours and a cutting to the chase to ours and a realness to ours that is impacted by what we know.
Yeah. Yeah. So at this point, and I'm open to any of you or all of you to kind of take this one, but so I'm imagining, like, I've got a number of friends who are effectively homeschooling at the moment, and some of them aren't drinking themselves to death at the same time, but a lot of them are struggling. And I'm imagining somebody listening and going, this sounds great. What on earth do you say? So if you imagined that you're going to talk to a kid at home, and the parent is going to be just kind of listening in the background, what would you share? I know it's not realistic because it's not how it works, but like, what's something that you kind of know from experience? Boy, this one often goes over very well. People see something in this.
Well, I can just speak for myself because I did the homeschool thing with 5 children at home while working a full-time job.
Yeah, by the way, I didn't say in the introduction, Brooke is certifiably insane. She's been let out to do the show. She will be going back to a safe facility shortly afterwards.
I can't be sure I'm not drinking myself to, no, I'm just kidding.
Cat's out of the bag.
But what I saw really quickly, like right when the pandemic hit, and even when, like, I feel like we had 2 waves, right? I really feel like we had the pandemic, and then we had the George Floyd situation and the protests. And in my house, it was like insanity, and then we calmed down, and then insanity again, right? And we were all at home in a very tiny house with 7 people. And one of the things that just came to me, and it's something that we teach in our, I feel like it's one of our like really younger curriculums, but Michael, you know this, is with schooling or with any kind of dealing with children who aren't at a level of peace of mind that they can hear you, right? We talk about, I wish I had one near me, but we talk about the snow globe, and we have the kids make snow globes. Yeah. But we talk about, like, if you're already there, right?
I'll do the visuals for those of you watching.
Oh, there you go. So if you're already, and kids, if, you know, homeschooling and parents having to deal with a bunch of stuff, optimal learning will never happen in that crazy state of mind. So your best foot forward is if you're feeling like you're not clear or going crazy, because I felt that a few times, or if you can see your kids aren't, trying to force them to do something or learn in that moment is just kind of like brushing your teeth with a mouthful of Oreos, right? There's nothing happening there. Yeah. But if you can get them to kind of understand that, like, if you're feeling like that, trying to learn isn't going to work that way, then they'll kind of be able to self-regulate. I mean, I know I had to do that with my kids when I was working full-time and they were all at home doing their own working. We had to have talks, like, if you, especially around math, like, can you imagine trying to teach a 1st grader, 2 5th graders, a 7th grader, or a 6th grader at that time, and a 9th grade math at home while working? I just had to say.
Look, I used to watch Little House on the Prairie.
They would come storming through my room. I don't understand this. And we would just have those conversations like, where's your snow globe, right? Like, are you shaking it up or are you letting it settle? Mm-hmm. That's the first step. And then we can talk about the math.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's funny because it's one of those things that I talk about. It's so common sense, but it is so uncommon in practice to take it into account. What about, actually, I'd love to hear one from each of you. Actually, what if you were going to kind of share one?
Yeah, well, when, yeah, I'll go. So I was going to say that I definitely had to pull out some of what I do in schools when I was at home with my kids doing this as well, because like Brooke said, it would get like, you would have all of them just revving. And my daughter was one that she's a people pleaser to the max. I have no idea where she gets it from. She wants to she wants to strive to like make sure everything's done right. And so it was really difficult for her because when it was first happening, computers were crashing. The site that you need to upload your work to isn't working. And so she kept she would get really upset when she wasn't able to turn in work. And me just trying to calmly tell her, it's not a big deal. Don't even worry about it. Teachers aren't, listen, this was in April, like the teachers aren't even caring, but for her, it really mattered. So we have an activity that we do with Skittles to just kind of show what's happening when you start to get really, all different emotions, like how we show them how their feelings intensify in weekend. Like the more that you're just going with the thought and you really think it's true, you keep going with it.
Okay.
The more.
Skittles bit.
Okay. So I wish I just gave Nicole hold on. No, I took them out because I kept.
You know who it is? It's the half employee who keeps stealing the Skittles.
It is.
With all the Skittles,
I just put them away yesterday because I kept eating them. But basically what we do is we would take, you know what? I'll demonstrate with tea. Here we go. We're just going to impromptu do this because we do it with tea bags too. Just with my daughter, I did it with Skittles. But I was showing her how she would get a thought in her head of, oh my goodness, I have to turn this in and it's not working. And my teacher's going to be mad at me. And then this, and then that's what she was doing. And so I showed her, I'll show you. We're just going to pretend like this is Skittles though, but it's a tea bag. So I showed her how.
For those of you listening on the audio-only version, she's holding a glass of water and is about to place a tea bag inside.
Very good. I would not do good in radio ever. So I showed her how basically if that thought pops in, just because it pops in does not mean it's true, right? So like if this popped in and it kind of went in like, oh no, I'm not gonna be able to turn in my work and my teacher's gonna be mad, but then it kind of just went, she didn't pay attention to it. She didn't really, she just moved on with her day. Then that water doesn't change color, right? It like a teeny bit, but it pretty much stays the same. But what I showed her with the Skittles, that I'm going to do with tea, is I showed her how what she was doing is she was really taking that to be true. And she just kept going with it. And this means this, and this means this. She kept doing it and doing it and doing it to the point of now her feeling got so intense. She was so nervous, so anxious. She couldn't think clearly anymore. She was stumbling across everything. And so just by me showing her that, she could just see, oh, now I understand what's going on. It wasn't a scary thing anymore, because I think that's the biggest thing is when you don't understand why you have these huge emotions happening, it becomes scary. And just by understanding, oh, this is what's happening. It's okay. This happens to everybody. This is just what it is. She was then able to see, okay, this is what's going on right now. I have a lot of anxious, nervous thinking right now, and I'm getting really, really overwhelmed and nervous, but that's the way it is sometimes. And that's not who I actually am. Like, this is just, we always default back to that clear. And so when she saw that, she could see, okay, I'm just going to move on. I'm not going to worry about it too much. And it really was helpful just to show her that. She keeps talking about it too.
And I will just say, I know I'm joking about it, but it's if you are listening to the podcast version, grab some Skittles or a tea bag and stick them in water. It's actually, I mean, we all logically know what's going to happen, but there's something about seeing it that just like, oh yeah, that is what happens. So that's a great example. James, you were ready to jump in.
Yeah, I was, but wow, that was a powerful visual. And I keep learning. This is awesome. But, the thing for us has been we've had to communicate so much, since March with our families and parents who we needed to know what their plans and ideas and needs were. They needed to know what ours were. But we didn't initially. We started approaching this just like the institution that we are. We're education. And so we were asking questions about technology needs and about what their preferences were. But we had to quickly, pull back. And I had to speak to my staff about the fact that we need to just check in. The conversation can't just be, well, what do you need as far as getting this work done? And here's the platform, and this is how you log in, and so forth and so on. We needed to soften that approach, and we needed to just check in with our families to say, hey, just checking in on you. Want to make sure that you keep lines of communication open, and we want to see how we can help. Because as we were also trying to provide technology and learning platforms, we were, setting up for folks to be able to get meals, for students to be able to eat in our communities. We were linking up with other resources. So for us, it was just the realization that this is connected so much with what folks are going through, and they needed to know that we could hear them. And we were able to, just establish a different kind of communication and a different connection. And we found that our communication style changed, the folks that who were responding to us. We had, 40% of our folks who were not even answering our phone calls. Well, they were in survival mode. They were trying to figure out, since they'd been furloughed, how they were going to eat. So when our conversations changed, I think it just allowed folks to relax. And then the switch was they started to contact us just about stuff, about life. But hey, where can we get this meal? And are we able to get tested? Do you guys know anything about getting a COVID test, so forth and so on? Once we figured out that our role was changed and what we're supposed to provide for our families is different, I think we were better able to reach them, and they sort of sensed what we were trying to do.
So what I love about that, as an example, is this is not, and this has been my experience right along, but it's just very apparent with the way that you guys do it and the audience you're doing it for. This is not some abstract conversation that will help you feel better about how crap life is. This actually helps you be life ready. It actually, as you're doing things like making sure you get your family fed, as you're doing things like making sure you're keeping your family safe, this allows you to do it with a degree of relative ease and grace. Mm-hmm. that is so important, because then it doesn't spiral. Mm-hmm. It doesn't just go from there's an I can't remember the name of the company, but in the UK, when I was living over there, there's a company, and their advertising slogan was, "We won't make a drama out of a crisis." And in a way, it seems to me that what you guys are sharing in the community you're sharing, it helps people not make dramas out of crises. It's not disavowing the crisis, but it's letting them deal with it from the best they got inside them. And I can't imagine a more helpful thing. What do you see as the future of this? Like, where are you actively headed, and where would you love it to go from here?
That's a good question. So I think, well, one, we do a lot of stuff nationally and internationally, but the four of us teach locally, obviously. And that's like the heart of Spark, is to go into schools like James School and go into the jails.
That's in the tip area, yeah.
Yeah, and we donate those programs to places like this, or we get people to fund it. So, when we were at Horizons for 2 years, that was a privately funded project that didn't cost the school system anything, but and we really try to do that a lot. So when COVID happened, all of that shut down. And so it really, like most of the world, we had to really kind of reflect and reconsider, okay, if we can't do that anymore, right? So if we can't go into the schools, and we can't get into the safe house for the ladies, and we can't get into the jails, how do we move forward? And my thought was, oh my gosh, I can't imagine not being with the kids. Like, okay, go virtual, great. That just, for me, did not excite me at all. I'm like, no, we have to be with them, right? Like, we have to be in front of them. And in June, it just became really clear for me that we had an opportunity to get really personal this coming year and do something that, if we can't get into these institutions anymore, how can we kind of foster some young people to take this out into the world themselves, because they're going to be with their peers no matter what, right? Like when I was at home for 6 months, my kids found ways to be with their peers, even if they couldn't go into a building. And so that's kind of the idea behind this new internship program that we're starting, on top of everything else that we're going to do next year.
In your free time.
In our free time. It took me a bit to get my team on board, because I had this idea and I kept talking about it. And finally I was like, all right, guys, I'm serious about this. This is happening. And they're like, oh, okay, we're actually doing this. Yeah. But the other thing that happened was, because I was home with my kids, I could see what they were doing with their peers and the conversations they were having with their peers. And my oldest daughter, who's almost 16, she was good while she had school. And then the George Floyd situation happened. And all of a sudden she turned into this, like, really, like, who she is, loving, caring, awesome individual who accepts, like, everybody, who is, like, open-hearted to everybody, to in the name of Black Lives Matter, and in the name of things that were just really terrible going in the world, and in the name of her political beliefs, she turned into the person she didn't like. I don't know how to say that in any other word, but I just saw through social media, her and her peers were just being incredibly hateful, creating more of a divide. Just, I don't even know how to say it, except for Ashley saw me break down for like 2 solid weeks. I could not believe the kid that I was raising would be so awful to other people that she didn't agree with, even though I agreed with most of, like, her points of view, right? Like I'm on her side, but not in the way that our virtual world has become. And so that's really when I just thought, gosh, we have got to get some kids that really have great ideas, really want to see change in our community, really want to, like, really see the need for things to be different, to come together and learn about the mind. Because just like James said, it's not about, like, the technology. Yes, we have to have the technology. So, like, yes, we have to have change. But if you don't connect with people, and in particular people that maybe don't agree with you,
yeah,
you're just climbing uphill, and it's it's only going to get worse. And so that's really what our next year looks like. And we're also going to be back in schools and jails and all of that. But
yeah, what about for you, James, as an educator, as a principal? Like, what would you love to see beyond your own school?
Yeah, that's tricky, because I'm trying not to just piggyback on what Brooke was saying. It's almost impossible not to, though. Mm-hmm. The George Floyd situation and all that seems to be driving social media, and vying for time in our consciousness is huge. And I think what she won't say to you is she has been concerned about her friend, who she has probably seen. I'm talking about you, Brooke. With my social media presence, which of course you would imagine that as a principal, I've got some filters. I think she saw some deteriorate. I think she saw me straight snatch some down and go, what? And she was able to reach out and say, hey, listen.
Don't hit send. That's all you got.
Yeah, I heard her say, I'm worried about you. That may not have been her words, but that's what I heard her say. But the bottom line is what's happening here in this district is the impact of these things has caused many of us, if not all of us, to really look at where we have been in this process in this country. And it's kind of made me, for one, think about what all things I have said and haven't said. There's absolutely a need for the filters to either come down or to change. And those filters are the ones that I'm talking about that we're using as we're taking in information, and the ones we're using as we're putting out information about our views or about what we're trying to accomplish. So for me, and this school, the involvement has been, speaking to, as part of our district, what our policies look like, being a part of that process for us to sort of strike while the iron is hot and keep some conversations on the forefront. We have to have those conversations because as an alternative school, and this connects it to what's happening in society, we see disproportionality all the time. And with regard to what things are said and not said, I've been a witness to some systemic things. And by not really working hard enough to address them, sort of allowed them to continue. So the change is these open conversations about, well, here's an example that we probably need to look at. This ticks several boxes for how not to do things, or for the impact that we shouldn't be having on society or people's lives. What are we going to do about this? So the whole conversation, first of all, is a conversation. It's a conversation that we now speak. And it's some action to keep moving forward. And I think policy is one way to make sure that those conversations do not go away over the course of time. We sort of get dulled or desensitized to these things. We hear enough George Floyd's that we sort of start to look and say, oh yeah, that again. And we keep it moving. There's a certain space that we have to stay in, I believe. And it's just about us trying to stay in that right space that is not freaking out and scaring the heck out of Brooke on Facebook, or also just not being complicit and doing nothing.
And it's a real thing. I mean, I don't often quote Stalin, but when he said,
"You're scaring me now."
Oh, just wait! I haven't even said it. No, one death is a tragedy. A million deaths is a statistic.
Wow.
And that's what we're up against. And that's why it's so powerful to have a Breonna Taylor, so powerful to have a George Floyd. I mean, not that I would expect anyone to volunteer for the job.
Right.
But that becomes the one person that reminds us that this is a tragedy, that reminds us that this matters. Whereas when you just look at the thing, you just kind of go, okay, I don't know. That's too, and what it seems to me is, especially with conversations like the ones you're pointing to, both of you, what you teach, what you're showing people about the mind, what you know about the snow globe and the Skittles and the tea bag, that allows it to be a real conversation and not to degrade into the kind of, I would be using air quotes if this was a visual medium. Well, it is a visual medium. Dialogue on Facebook, right? It's like, it's not dialogue. I don't know if anybody's ever actually seen dialogue. It doesn't look like that. Right? Now, okay, I'm going to do two things because we're coming towards the end of time. So I want Brooke or Ashley, actually, but I'd love you guys to share how we can help. We being the collective term for the universe, or at least those in the universe listening. Like, how can we support the work that you're doing?
Well, one is that it's the perfect time because we're in a giant fundraiser right now. And so the program that Brooke was speaking about that we're really wanting to take on youth interns and foster their creativity and that passion and that for the good and for change in their own communities. So in order to run this brand new program, because we don't already have a whole bunch of other ones, in order to run this, it takes funding. And so right now we are doing a fundraiser for that program specifically. And so all the money raised will be going to this program. And this week we have had tons of generous donors, and we have a lot of raffle prizes. We have all sorts of stuff from you, Michael. So thank you very much. We have programs, we have all sorts of stuff, books, everything. Then on top of that, we have Amazon gift cards, Visa gift cards, restaurants, all sorts of stuff. The only thing that anybody has to do is just go on and donate, and we have a link. I'm sure you have it somewhere.
We'll put it underneath. But if you want to speak,
Perfect.
if one of you wants to look it up quickly and speak it, you can speak it as well. But yeah, we'll make sure that it's there with the.
Brooke, you should look up the link while I'm. So basically, you go to the link that she's going to look up, and when you click into it, you donate as little as $5, because right now this week we are in a contest, and the contest this week all is about how many donors you can get. So it's not about the money, although the money would be great if you have a whole bunch, go ahead, but it's really the donors. And so we have to have the top 3 donors for our organization. And if we do that, if we have the most donors, then we get an extra $4,000. So we win additional prizes. So $5 is all that it takes. And then not only are you helping us, but you also are entering to win tons of great prizes. So please help out with that, because that'd be amazing. That's the biggest thing that you could do right now.
Beautiful. And Brooke, do you have the URL? Do you
no, it's long. It's Mighty Cause / a lot of stuff, and there you go.
All right. It'll be, look underneath this video, or
yes.
We'll share with the podcast as well. Okay. My last question for each of you. This is how I like to end the show. By the power vested in me as a podcast host, I am going to ordain each of you emperor or empress of the universe. What's your first decree as ruler of the universe?
Wow. Maybe I should have listened to your last podcast to see what that means.
Right. Mine.
Go ahead, ladies first.
The only thing that's coming to mind is really just I would want you to not just go with the first thing you think about somebody and just assume that that's true. Just stay open to maybe you don't actually know.
Yeah, beautiful. James, you sounded like you were ready to do some edicts.
Well, I think I would really just try to define love as certain actions, certain things that we do, certain behaviors, and decree that we're all required to do 21 acts of love daily.
Mm.
Nice. Empress Brooke?
I like that. Yeah, I would follow that with James. Like, before you act, find love and understanding, then act.
Yeah. I'm going to just sort of, normally this is the point where I go, well, thanks. And I will do that in a minute. But I want to reiterate as best I can. I have been around this work specifically for the last 12, 13 years. I've been working with humans for over 30. What these guys do is freaking amazing. And so I just want to add to the appeal, sort of a personal appeal. If you can, contribute. It's one of the ways where so many people feel like, well, there's nothing I can do. I mean, it's terrible, but there's nothing I can do. Maybe I'll vote, but that probably, there is something you can do. And what you can do is you can go to the link and you can give $5, you can give $50, you can give whatever you can. And it's just, it's not everything, but it is something. And I just really encourage you to do it. So guys, thank you so much for coming on. It has been an absolute pleasure. Really nice to see you again, each of you. And
Michael, I just want to say thank you so much, because you are hands down one of the most supportive, loving, generous people that we are in this work with. So I really appreciate you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you guys.
And I want to thank all of you as well for your impact on me and us. So thank you.
That's a nice way to end. A little gratitude circle. There we go. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for listening.